back to Pop Culture Graveyard. I am Hollis. With me, as always, is Dave. Hello, Dave.
Hey, Hollis.
Thumbs up or thumbs down? Did you enjoy the nonstop thrill ride, the gritty, seedy underbelly of Los Angeles as depicted in LA Confidential?
I did enjoy it. Yeah. It would have to be pretty well made, too, for me to enjoy that much, like, killing and deceit and all that stuff.
Yeah.
If you're going to do that, you better do it well, or I'm not going to like it. And they did it well.
I thought it would be good to do this harder-edged type of movie coming off of a bunch of romantic or sweet films that we've been digesting lately. And so I thought it would be great to get more action and more ugliness. But I remembered the film being far more bloody and violent and, ugly than it was this watch.
I think we're learning a lot about how you remember a movie and what a movie actually is, which is like tells you everything you need to know about movies because they like germinate in your head and you write scenes that aren't in it. You come up,
you
decide
repeat
how bloody it
scenes.
is. We thought that Rudy the Rabbit was a constant failure in sports. In Meatballs, we thought Rudy was a complete sports failure. He makes one soccer mistake.
I thought Perry and Moonstruck broke up with like 8 women. It's 2.
and so we're learning that. You'd think that you'd notice it just from watching a movie again down the road, but I think watching the movie again and then talking about it very intentionally brings up these things.
Right. Before we jump into the film, I just want to say we did a couple of movies back to back, Groundhog Day and Moonstruck, in which you and I both really dislike the opening song. First is Weatherman, and for Moonstruck, it was That's Amore. Which
I can't decide which I don't like more. I think, gun to my head, I'm saying play Weatherman twice rather than having to hear That's Amore.
I can't believe I'm saying this. I think I might agree with you, and it's mostly, I think, because of Dino's delivery. This film has a great opening song. It is of its time. Accentuate the positive, eliminate the negative.
Don't mess with Mr. In Between.
Et cetera, et cetera. Yes. And that plays during and around the voiceover by Danny DeVito's character, who is on the QT and very hush-hush. So this week, we are jumping into the 1997 cop shoot 'em up, LA Confidential. It is directed by our beloved Curtis Hanson, who a few years after this would bring us Wonder Boys, Dave.
Yeah.
Curtis Hanson also did the screenplay with Brian Helgeland. This movie is based on the book by James Ellroy. Did you have any experience with James Ellroy's work?
None.
There was a short period of time where me and my friend Jeff became obsessed by James Ellroy. A weird guy. He spoke in this kind of jazzbo hepcat language, and he would do book circuit tours. There's a book, I think it was called My Dark Places, and it's all about how his mother was murdered and that was the defining feature of his life and sent him down very dark places. He searched for her killer. He could not find his mother's killer, so he became obsessed with the Black Dahlia murder case, which is another unsolved murder, although George Hodel did it. It is the views expressed by Hollis are not necessarily the views of Dave.
I'm just glad you're bringing up murders. I hear that sells podcasts.
Yeah. Yeah, here's hoping. But anyway, James Ellroy, for a while, was the most interesting writer in America for about 5 years, I believe, right through White Jazz. Anyway, this film stars Russell Crowe, our old pal from The Nice Guys. It stars Guy Pearce, and the two of them together, Dave, give you the accent you want in a fine actor.
Is that
It also stars Kevin Spacey, speaking of Dean Martin, who is very much cut in the Dino mold. The film also features James Cromwell as Captain Dudley Smith, David Strathairn as Pierce Paget, Kim Basinger as a sex worker named Lynn Bracken, and Danny DeVito as a smut peddler who exists on tips from the police most specifically Kevin Spacey's character, Sergeant Jack Vincennes.
I want to
Yeah.
point out that of all these characters, I recognized Danny DeVito and Kevin Spacey and James Cromwell. Those are the people who I was like, I know who that is. That's high for me. And only James Cromwell because he is Ephraim Cochrane. He had the first successful warp drive and met the Vulcans on the same day.
And when did James Cromwell play him?
Oh, in one of the movies? Star Trek The Next Generation?
Get out of here with that shit.
Trust me. Trekkies know.
So it is impossible to go in depth on this movie. Talk about a movie that's easy to get lost in the weeds on.
Yeah. First of all, I thought I had seen it, and then it felt completely unfamiliar to me. So if I did see it, I either wasn't paying attention or it was too long ago.
Oh, wow.
So it felt completely new to me. I was amazed how well I was following it. I think it's a combination of me getting better at watching films and a film doing a great job of keeping you on track.
The first few times I saw it, I would get more out of it each time I saw it. There were so many diverging storylines. I kind of felt that way about Moonstruck. We could pick just one of the relationships and spend the whole episode talking about it. This is that way, even more so. There's more pairings and more intersections of storylines in this one than maybe any film will be covering.
There's a show out there that does, it's called Arrival 5 Minutes at a Time. And it's the movie Arrival. And they look at 5 minutes of the movie and talk about it for an hour.
Wow.
And they take it 5 minutes at a time. And I'm like, Arrival, that's the right movie to do that with. This is like that. You could do LA Confidential 5 minutes at a time. It's a rich environment.
Yeah.
So why don't you go ahead and tackle it?
Oh, great. I may tag out at some point, so be ready. Stay near the turnbuckle.
I'm up on the ropes.
The film opens. First of all, it's just gorgeous set design, gorgeous production design. The wardrobe. You are in LA in the early 50s. 1953, I believe, is when the film is set. We open on the narration from Danny DeVito's character, Sid Hutchins, who runs a really smutty, low-end porn mag.
Is it porn mag or is it like sensation mag?
It's porn for the time. You remember later we see the Vice Squad and they're looking at, pretty tame burlesque photos and calling it high-class porn.
Right. Yeah.
So we'll just say he has a smut rag in the parlance of the time.
He has a smut rag with like a detective bent, like a police bent, like a it's like about busting hopheads. Yeah.
Half smut rag, half crime blotter.
There you go. That's what it is.
There it is. So through Sid Hutchins' narration, we learn a ton of things. We learn that the heroin kingpin of Los Angeles, the underworld figure Mickey Cohen, is going to prison, and he's got a whole suitcase full of missing heroin. This suitcase of missing heroin really drives the whole plot, and it's the mark of a good movie that you really don't ever see the heroin again outside of the opening narration. There are two-man hitman teams that are assaulting different lieutenants of his. The heroin is stolen, and that sets wheels in motion that drive the entire narrative train of this film to its bloody conclusion. Like a lot of the skillful scripts we've looked at, Dave, we meet all of these characters in really ideal ways. Every single character that's introduced, one after another, demonstrate their identifying characteristic. We meet Russell Crowe's character, Bud White, when he's saving a woman. We meet Sergeant Jack Vincennes when he's at a badge of honor rap party where he is the consultant. He's the police consultant on this. It's supposed to be the Joe Friday show. What a dragnet.
Right.
Really.
He's great. He's a consultant who behaves like he's the star.
Yeah. The same with Sergeant Edmund Exley, played by Guy Pearce. He is the watch commander, and we get a sense from the beginning that he's a squeaky Boy Scout. He will not take a bribe. Captain Dudley Smith. We meet him, and we instantly know he's dirty via his questions to Exley about, would you plant evidence? Would you beat up some guy? Would you
shoot a man in the back?
Yeah.
He literally says, would you shoot a man in the back? Would you
I
step on a kitten?
would you? Yeah. Oh, it's terrible. And we meet Lynn Bracken. We meet her in a liquor store. And I don't know if this is intended, Dave, or not, but Bud White's character only sees her from the back. And they pan around and she's got a hood on. And it almost looks like she's wearing a nun's habit at one point.
Oh,
And
I
then
hadn't.
we see
Yeah.
the face. I might be geeking out a little, but I don't know if that's supposed to tell us that she is actually purer than her occupation at the time would denote,
Mhm.
and that he sees something in her that's almost angelic, even though
Yeah.
she's, made up as something else.
I saw the hood as the thing that was blocking his view because he was like, "Hey, is that?" I felt like the
He
reason
thought it was
he
the real star, you think?
the reason he steps up to the counter and cranes his neck is because he's like, "I could have sworn that was Veronica Lake."
Yeah, maybe. I mean, that's what's great.
He
We each have a
he
different take.
yeah, he definitely seems to, like, want to know who's behind that, and it's like a cloak. I mean, it
Yeah,
hangs
yeah,
far beyond her face,
yeah.
but it's black and white, it's Habit-esque.
Hmm.
Yeah, you're right.
So we meet all of these characters. The principles are just unfolded in front of us. It all feels very natural. I don't know if I've ever met that many characters one after another and had it not be jerky at all.
Yeah, it's like a perfect cross between naturally meeting the characters or having them like a blaxploitation film shoved in front of you where their name's like, "Ta-da! This is so and so, and this is so and so."
Without the Inglorious Bastards kind of Stiglitz
Yeah, yeah,
graphics.
yeah. And those smash cut graphic introductions.
Yes.
Instead, you're getting each person delivered to you very intentionally, but also
Hmm.
very smoothly. Very good character introductions.
Yeah. We even meet minor characters, you could call them, or more peripheral characters. Buzz Meeks, a former cop who now acts as muscle for David Strathairn's character, who is Pierce Paget. Both of these characters are waiting outside of the liquor store with another woman, Susan Lefferts, played by Amber Smith, who is beautiful, as is every woman in this film. She plays a Rita Hayworth type. She has just gotten a nose job to look more like Rita Hayworth, which is another plot point that will be unfolded later.
Also helps to more expose Bud White's extreme hatred of people who beat up on women. He sees her with that taped up nose and he goes over to find out what happened to her nose.
Yeah, I mean, he sees a woman with a bandage. He only has one setting on his brain, and that's some guy did that to her. He knows the evil men can do. And so we meet Buzz Meeks, Pierce Paget, Susan Lefferts, and they are all with Lynn Bracken. We've also met through the Jack Vincennes introduction a couple of day players over at Paramount, Matt and Tammy, who were arrested. Sid takes a picture of them, and it's the movie premiere pot bust. I think it's a really great moment in a sea of great moments this film has because it captures how disposable Tinseltown was at that time and just how many kids off the farms or runaways
Mhm.
or whatever just got chewed up by the Hollywood machine.
Yeah, it's classic meat grinder. Danny DeVito is one of the guys who's living off the meat. He's
He,
like, "I love this place. They bring in new idiots every week."
Sid Hutchins may be the ugliest character in the entire movie.
I considered that. I
You
mean,
know, and there
there's
are
some
people
pretty
shooting each other,
there's
Dave.
ruthless murderers in this, and Sid Hudgens, I think it's
Hudgens.
Hudgens.
Oh, that's even better. Hudge.
Yeah, like Smudge. He's the most irredeemable.
Yeah, and also the way that he just talks about people and the way that he blithely, I want to do an all hophead issue.
Mhm.
He's throwing gay kids and lesbians out of the closet. He's entrapping people to get arrested. There's low morals and then there's Sid underneath that.
You're doing
But
great. You're like 5 minutes in.
I'm trying, man. I'm churning. We got a lot to get through. So one great thing that happens is Edmund Exley is in charge as watch commander of the precinct at night. There are a couple of newspaper men there, and they're there. And I love when we meet the newspaper guys, they're interviewing Captain Dudley Smith, and their angle for their story is Silent Night with the LAPD. And within 5 minutes, drunk cops are beating up Mexican prisoners. A flashbulb goes off, and we cut to a newspaper.
Bloody,
Bloody
bloody
Christmas.
Christmas.
How great is that? And it also captures the access that press had to the LAPD there. There was a game going on. There was a cat and mouse. It's like, all right, we're gonna turn the other way on this story, but oh God, we got to follow this story. It was a weird time for the truth.
Yeah, there's some exposition where the LAPD is working on their new persona. They're working on their
Mm-hmm.
new reputation. But it appears that it's entirely an idea with no effort. They're going to
No,
go purely on PR.
that is so police. That is
Yeah,
so their thing.
there's a lot of real police lessons in this movie.
Yeah, let's not retrain these guys. Let's just buy a few billboards.
Exactly. Yeah,
We
let's
get
get
the
some
right
articles
bumper
written.
sticker. Yeah.
Yeah,
Long story short, Bud White and his partner, Dick Stensland, who is a horrible character, they get suspended, along with Jack Vincennes, who gets a slap on the wrist, switched over to Vice from Narcotics, where he usually works. And Edmund Exley is the star witness who told his higher ups that Jack lives for badge of honor, and that's the way to get him to testify, to corroborate Exley's evidence. Just like everything that comes out of Exley's mouth, he's 100% correct. And the wheels are in motion. We have Bud White brought back onto the force to work under Captain Dudley on a special assignment, which is fairly nefarious. We have Dick Stensland out there somewhere doing God knows what. And Jack Vincennes is now switched over to Vice, where he starts to uncover certain prostitution evidence that leads him down a rabbit hole. I have to tell you, it sounds like all the events of a 2-hour movie. We're maybe 15 minutes in.
yeah.
Skillfully unfolded, all of these events.
I'm a pauser. I'm a rewinder. I'm a, hey, what did that watch say? Hey, what did that piece of paper say? I'm that guy. And I didn't do that once. If you're watching a movie and somebody looks at their watch and there's a close up and you didn't catch what time it was, then the shot of the watch wasn't right. This is well done. I did
Right.
not pause or rewind once in a place where I could have gotten lost 100 times.
Yeah. This brings us to the Night Owl Cafe murders. Edmund Exley has gotten a promotion due to his own intrepid gamesmanship. He is now detective lieutenant in the Homicide Bureau, and he is the only one working the desk. Everyone else checks out long before they're supposed to. And so he gets the Night Owl Cafe murders as his call.
Worth pointing out that at this point, he is where he is because he was such a good snitch and such a good testifier against his fellow police.
Yeah.
So he is not a popular person. He's not there for bravery. He's there for honesty.
Well, see, that's the interesting thing, too, about this movie and what's great about the dichotomy of it. He is the new LAPD that they want to build, but they don't have the balls to do it. You know, in a perfect world, they'd all be honest. Instead, he's the only one.
Dudley Smith is, to his right, he's saying to someone, going to be a whole new LAPD. It's going to be a kinder, gentler LAPD. Turns to his left and goes, you got to be willing to shoot a guy in the back. You got to be willing to plant evidence. You got to be, it doesn't work. The two things are completely incongruous.
And I think that is definitely a thing. I think they captured that well. What I love about the Night Owl Cafe murders, the way it's set up, he walks in, it's like all the best crime scene photos you've ever seen, all in one.
The Valentine's Day Massacre. And
just
got all that. Yeah,
everything.
Right.
And LA has a lot of those. And a lot of them go unsolved. You know, there's just tons of forensic evidence. There's a dead cook behind the counter. There's a bloody splotch on the wall near one of the tables. There's a bloody trail leading to the back room. He doesn't know if anyone's still in there, so he has his hand on his revolver, kicks open the door, and there's like 7 or 8 bodies stacked on top of each other, all shotgunned to death.
Yeah, that particular shot was almost weird to see in color because I'm so used to seeing that stack of bodies in black and white. That literal stack of bodies from like gangster documentaries.
In no time, Dudley Smith shows up and takes control of the crime scene which is not surprising as we go along. Seeing Exley with Dudley Smith was very interesting because Exley, apparently, his father was a legend in the department. He got killed in the line of duty. So Dudley is almost like this avuncular character. He's very much kind of a surrogate father to him, but a surrogate
Yeah.
father that you can't please.
He even says like Sonny and Boyo, things that you might say to a son.
And he doesn't want to be like Dudley. And yet, when the photographer comes up and is like, "Can I get a picture, Captain?" He takes his glasses off and he, almost like a centurion, he like kind of presents
Yeah.
himself very much in that mold. So it's interesting. What does Exley really want? You know?
Yeah, I think it's being sort of breadcrumbed to us that Exley, he's good, he's honest, he wants a true and fair police force, but he also is a little hungry for the spotlight. He's a little hungry for credit for being this good. He wants credit
Right.
at this point.
So, one of the cool things about this film is that a lot of interesting characters end up paired up with each other. And the first pairing really is Exley and Vincennes, Guy Pearce and Kevin Spacey. Everyone's looking for the killers of the Night Owl. And so they're all given lists. And Spacey's like, "This list is bullshit, but I got a guy." And no one will go with him. So Exley, who no one wants to work with, is like, "I'll go with you." So they're paired up.
Exley and Vincennes are the two smartest men on the force.
From ways.
Exley is smart and wants to use his smarts to solve crimes. And Vincennes is smart and wants to use his smarts to be rich and successful.
Mm.
But they're both sharp and they know it. So Vincennes is more than happy to hook up with the snitch. And the honest guy is more than happy to hook up with the bribing camera hog if it'll solve his crimes. So that's the two perfect guys to put together first.
And so Exley and Vincennes end up happening upon, through questioning this boxer, three African American dudes who are shocked at what they're being accused of. When they roll up, Captain Smith's men are there. We don't know why at the time. We assume that they were just working their list. And they found the shotguns that were supposedly used. And so they get them, and Exley has to stop Dudley's guys from killing the suspects. And so they arrest them.
And in this case, the two cops that were already there, we know, having seen the whole movie, they aren't there to apprehend. They're there to kill these guys. We found the killers. There was a shootout. They're all dead. There won't be any testimony.
To tie up loose ends.
Exactly. And you hate to think about how often that used to happen.
Oh,
and
my
you know
God.
what else you hate to think?
How often it happens now. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
While the suspects are being held, Exley shows to everyone in the department just how brilliant he is. He interrogates the suspects masterfully, ends up having them say way more than they even realize they're saying. It slowly dawns on Exley, these guys think they're arrested for a different crime.
Mm-hmm.
And it is a crime against a woman.
Being held somewhere. So it becomes an emergency.
It's a ticking clock.
Yeah, it's a ticking, yeah.
Bud White explodes. He jumps in the room, puts a gun in one of the suspects' mouths, and plays Russian roulette until he gets an address out of him. Everyone heads off, and they find this woman who was kidnapped and raped and still being held, tied to the bed. The most harrowing shot in the whole picture, really.
Yeah, hard to look at.
Very hard. It's amazing how you can see a lot of ugly things, and then you're presented with true ugliness. And in a lesser film, it would not recover from the Miss Soto scene where she's being held. And after everything, you can see what's been done to her. The fact that this movie could handle a scene like that and handle it so realistically and recover from that, and the way that Bud rescues her is very sweet. By the time Dudley comes in, he's already shot the suspect, framed him for a shot, put a gun in his hand, and he's putting a blanket over Miss Soto. He's taken the gag out of her mouth, and he's stroking her hair. I'm like getting emotional recounting it.
Yeah,
like
he's letting her know she's safe now.
Yeah. And it's, of course, calling up stuff from his own past, as we learn later.
Bud White is hardcore, but he's good. He's going to shoot the person who was raping that woman. We almost need to have seen her the way we saw her so that when we see the perpetrator, our minds go, shoot that fucking guy.
The way that all of these characters are presented before then, You have Exley, you have Vincennes, and you have Bud White. Which of those three would you guess has the warm caramel center? It's Bud White.
Yeah, yeah.
Bud White is driven by the purest motives in the whole film. He's the
Mhm,
sweetheart. In an ideal world, every policeman would be driven by the impulse to help people, to save people, to be there
mhm.
for people. That's Bud fucking White.
She sees it in him, all but comes out and actually says, "I see your warm caramel center."
Right after the rescue scene, the sight of Bud being held back by 10 officers who trying to get at Exley to murder him. Those 10
For saying
officers are having trouble holding him back.
Stensland got what he deserved.
And so will you.
That's what set him off.
It's so great knowing where these two characters are headed,
Yeah, yeah,
you
yeah, and
know?
it looks like those 8 to 10 guys are just barely holding Bud White back.
Yeah,
It is
yeah.
really well done.
It's so great.
It also establishes in Dudley Smith, it establishes in his mind, like, man, he really wants to kill that guy.
Yeah, I can use that.
Yeah.
The first couple of times I saw this film, I'm like, who's ever going to believe that those suspects they were holding escaped from police custody? Now it's so obvious that Dudley had one of his guys let them escape. Dudley wasn't counting on Exley tracking them down. One of Dudley's guys, one of the guys that helped corral those suspects in the first place, overheard that Exley was leaving and looking for Vincennes to back him up because he had a lead and he wasn't going to let him go alone. So he goes with him. That guy ends up getting killed. And Ed Exley, aka Shotgun Ed, ends up killing all of the suspects himself.
Yeah. It's very intentionally, each killing is, he has no choice. There is no freeze, put the gun down.
Right.
It happens fast, and it's just him staying alive. And in the process of staying alive, he kills everyone in the room.
And it really is a great scene because I don't know that it tells us as much as it teaches Exley about how this world works.
Mm-hmm.
He's bringing back alive Exley. And in 5 seconds, an empty Coke bottle falls on the floor and sets off this murder spree that he is almost a helpless combatant in.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's eye-opening for him, I think.
Yeah, and he's shook for like the next 2 scenes.
He is. He's totally in shock. And he goes in there, and what's the first thing he hears? You done good, kid, or you did good, kid.
Yeah. The last thing he wants to hear from all these crooked cops. And he just did their work for them. We wanted these guys eliminated.
Right.
And lo and behold, the squeaky clean guy did it for us.
Yeah.
Even better.
They're running out of medals at this time for Exley. Like, they keep promoting him. It's a great thing about Exley, too, because he's got some dirt under his fingernails. He's not afraid to get dirty. He just wants to get dirty for the right reasons. And he shares that with Bud White, who is sick of all of the strong arm stuff he has to do. He wants to work cases. He wants to be a real cop,
He wants to shoot on goal. He's a hockey goon.
It's true. But he was on the goon squad with Captain Dudley. And he's much more happy being the goon for Wayne Gretzky, which is Exley. Wayne Exley. It's like
I don't like to read into movies.
Yeah. But he's like, as long as somebody's going to score, I'll be the goon there. We're moving forward. We're doing something. There are a lot of other things. There's construction of the Santa Monica Freeway that Pierce Patchett is a part of. He runs a brothel that is often frequented by congressmen. There's a lot of quid pro quo that goes on. The smut peddler is in on some of this. So you never know who to trust, whether you're the audience or whether you're the characters in the film. This kid, Matt, who is in the Christmas Eve pot bust, he ends up being coerced into trying to seduce the DA, who, is kind of a closeted gay man. And by the way, the guy who plays Matt is the douchebag from The Devil Wears Prada. I hate that actor, all because of The Devil Wears Prada. But, we've talked about a lot of violence. We've talked about a lot of seedy, dirty underbelly stuff. My favorite scene in the entire film is the Bisbee pillow scene with Bud and Lynn.
Aww.
They share the truth, just like Loretta and Ronnie in Moonstruck. They tell
Mhm.
each other who they really are. Bud White doesn't tell anyone on the force who he is. Even Stensland, his pal, he doesn't open up to him about why he became a cop or anything. And she doesn't let anyone into that back bedroom. That's her private bedroom. That's her
Yeah,
sanctuary.
isn't that great? You know that immediately because
Yep.
everything else in her place is for entertaining. She opens this door. I don't even know how they did it. I guess it's just fantastic set design. It immediately dawned on me. I was like, "Oh, this is the real her. This bed, this nightstand, this Bisbee, Arizona pillow."
He knows it because he says to her,
Oh yeah.
"Why me? Why did I get in here?" And she doesn't know. She's acting on something. Again, just like in Moonstruck, they recognize something in each other.
Mhm.
They're both wounded. They're both wearing armor.
Quickly and unspoken, like just a connection. Very few words, very little interaction, but they both know.
Right. So whenever Exley and Jack are together, it's really a great pairing because they're so very different. Exley knows exactly why he became a cop. Jack Vincennes has no idea anymore. He's totally forgotten at this point. One guy says when the two are walking out, I love this line, between the two of you guys, you should take along a photographer.
Yeah, I remember that.
I love the scene. Exley wants to follow Bud White's character, and so he gets Vincennes to help him because Jack wants Exley's help with his case, Fleur de Lis, whatever you desire, which is a prostitution ring he's trying to track down. Anyway, long story short, at the Formosa in LA, this great scene takes place where the two of them go to brace Johnny Stompanato because they know that Bud White talked to him. And he's there with his girlfriend at the time, who was the real life movie star, Lana Turner.
What a scene.
What a great fucking scene.
Stompanato.
Oh, Johnny Stompanato. What a great name.
What
One
a
of the all time great
stomp.
names. Yeah.
That guy has to stomp people to death. Like
Yeah.
that has to be his
He
thing.
never he never
Uh,
had a chance. Oh
what a
my
great
God.
scene. Yeah.
One of the many things I love about it, aside from just it's one of the few truly comic moments in the whole film, is that it shows the stark difference between Exley and Vincennes. Like Jack knows Hollywood and Hollywood royalty, even like the back of his hand. He's totally comfortable in those circles. Exley is so ignorant of a certain strata of Hollywood, even though they're in Hollywood. He's so
Just to
non-showbiz.
just to get exposition out there,
Mm.
Hollis is talking about Exley leaning down to the actual Lana Turner and saying, just because some surgeon cuts a whore to look like Lana Turner doesn't mean that she's Lana Turner. And Vincennes says
Hmm.
that is Lana Turner.
Yeah. A whore cut to look like Lana Turner is still a whore.
It's still that's the line. Yeah.
And Lana
When
Turner
they
throws a drink in his face. It's gorgeous.
when they're back in the car and Exley is cleaning his glasses, that's catching snowflakes in The Revenant. It's the one fun moment.
It bonds them.
It's the only joy in the movie.
It's a
It's the
pressure
only
release.
fun in the movie. Yeah, yeah, it's a pressure release. It's pretty great.
So yeah, they're great teamed up. If anyone hasn't seen the film now and you're thinking about watching it, hop out now. We're going to lay down some serious spoilers as we keep chugging. Jack Vincennes ends up getting knocked off by Captain Dudley Smith. It's masterful the way they shoot this scene. Jack Vincennes happens upon Dudley Smith at his home to ask him his advice. His wife and kids happen to be away. He's there all alone. He's making tea. Jack Vincennes could not be more relaxed, more at home. He's lying back. He's with tea. Dudley's like, "Have you told anybody this? What you
No, not
figured
yet.
out?"
I
I
came
came
straight here.
straight to you. And
Worst thing he
then
could have said.
worst thing. And he immediately turns around. And it's great because they don't telegraph it for the audience. The audience is truly surprised when Dudley turns around and shoots him. It's
Mhm.
a really well done scene.
Vincennes is beautifully surprised.
It's a good death on camera.
It is
And
because it's a combination. It's not. It's he has to die, but he also has to come to grips with it and come up with a way to get this guy back before he dies.
And he does by mentioning what Exley told him in confidence, which is Exley gave an imaginary name, Rollo Tomasi, to the killer of his father, who was never caught. He's the guy who gets away with it. And it's the reason Ed became a cop, to catch this character in his mind, this Rollo Tomasi. So he
It's
told it to
made
Jack.
up. Yeah, and he's
Totally
only
made
ever
up.
told Jack
Vince,
Vincennes.
yep. After Dudley shoots him, before Jack dies, he says Rollo Tomasi to him.
Even smiles a little.
Smiles a little because
Like
he knows Exley is smart. And if Dudley follows up on this, and he's got to, because he's an old school cop on the beat origins, probably, he's going to run down this name.
Think about any human being. You just shot a guy, and instead of his face saying, "Oh my God, I'm fading away," he says a name, and his face says, that smile says, "You're going to get yours because of Rollo Tomasi." So not only is he throwing this name in the air in hopes that Exley eventually hears it, he's smiling while he says it, thereby making Dudley Smith have to find out. Why is this guy smiling? I just killed him.
He's also smiling because he knows now that Dudley is going to help catch himself.
Yeah.
When we're back at the police precinct, Dudley pretty much offers a bounty for whoever killed Jack Vincennes, even though he killed him. As everyone's filing out, he grabs Exley and he sows the seeds of his own demise, because he asks Exley, and the way he asks him, we're running down the known associate of Jack Vincennes, Rollo Tomasi. Have you ever heard about, no one on the planet but Exley and Jack Vincennes knew that name. And the look, and Guy Pearce plays it perfectly.
There's a great close up of Guy Pearce, and he has to do like three things. He has to say, oh, but he has to hide the, and then he has to play it cool, and he nails it.
Yeah, shock, recovery, fakery.
Yeah.
And at that moment, he knows exactly who killed Vincennes, and he knows exactly who's behind everything that he and Jack were chasing down. So, with Jack dead, Exley is working by himself, and Bud White is working by himself. And they're both kind of dovetailing and making the same kind of inferences about the Night Owl. At this point, Dudley, he's got the Victory Motel, which is this perfect set. It's this rundown, emptied motel where he and his goon squad, including Bud White, routinely beat up gangsters who come to LA.
They brace people. We're going to brace
people. They make them go home because they're in charge now of the underworld. They're taking over for Mickey Cohen.
Yeah, under the guise of LA is clean now. We don't put up with gangsters, so go home. Really, we're the gangsters now.
And Dudley, like a true dirty cop, he tries to make it seem like this is a special assignment that the chief put him onto. Anyway, he sets up Exley. He knows from that other scene we were talking about where everyone had to hold Bud back from killing Exley. Using Sid Hutchins, he gets Lynn Bracken to sleep with Exley, which is kind of a very ugly thing. But for Lynn, she can compartmentalize that kind of stuff and have it not affect her relationship with Bud. Bud, of course, cannot compartmentalize. One good thing, not remotely. She's the one good thing in his life, and the one thing that makes all of the rest of it bearable. And so, of course, Sid had pictures taken of Exley and Lynn in flagrante delicto.
That's exactly what he would have said, too, had they thought of it.
And I'll tell you something, too, just on a side note. Watching Sid get beat up, it's kind of pathetic. Sid was not a physical person. He's a little tiny man, a little tiny, heavyset man. He's not built for any kind of violence. And seeing him beat up and eventually killed, it's an ugly end for an ugly character.
Yeah.
So Bud White is on a mission then to kill Exley. It's only when Exley, who is always quick on his feet, tells Bud, Dudley sent you, didn't he? You're being set up. He's the one behind it all. He talks to him and he gives White the benefit of the doubt. He doesn't just say, hey, help in here.
He's explaining to him while Bud is ferociously trying to beat the living crap out of him.
Anyone else would be scared to death and wouldn't be able to talk.
Yeah, it's just trying to get out enough information for Bud White to come to his senses. And he pulls it off.
Because at his heart, Bud is a good cop too.
And the two of them have been operating under sort of false assumptions about each other.
Yep.
Exley is assuming the whole time that this guy is purely muscle, has no brains, and
Hmm.
is just a bad cop. And Bud White thinks of Exley that he is purely about getting the medals and the pictures in the paper and just getting as high up as he can. And they're both wrong about each other. And meanwhile, they're both trying to solve the exact same crime. And now they've met.
What I love about the team up of Exley and White is that together, Exley and White make one far better cop. They complete each other very well. They also combine to make a better man. Bud White is all impulse and Exley is analytical. They're drawn purposefully, very differently. And yet it's only when you find them finally working together that we see just how much they have in common. They're so good together. Bud is not just muscle with Exley. They
Yeah.
respect each other and they share
Yeah.
info and he very quickly, they happen upon a crime scene where Paget was kind of tortured and Bud is like his fingers were broken. This was a torture set. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. You know what else happens in that scene? They
mm,
have the realization, oh, he's tying up his loose ends. Lynn. So Bud goes running for the door. He throws him the keys, which
mm-hmm,
he deftly catches.
right. Remember the nice guys?
Remember the nice guys? He goes running out the door, and Exley says, I'll call, I forget, I'll call the West Hollywood
They're closer.
local. They're closer. And I picture Bud White on his way out to the car going, call the cops. I never would have thought of that.
Yeah,
That's how
yeah.
different
I
they
hope we
are.
get there in time. Yeah.
Yeah, like he's like, "Oh, I was just gonna go there and hope for the best," but that guy thinks to call the cops.
Mm-hmm. A funny moment that happens, and it's, bittersweet funny. It's not laugh out
Mhm.
loud funny. Is, when Bud first heard what happened and he went to confront Lynn, he ends up losing his temper and he
Oh
actually
yeah.
slaps her a couple of times. So she has like a black eye. And when he found out and he went after Exley, he went to kill Exley, and Exley ended up with a black eye and some cuts. And so when Exley happens upon Lynn and sees her, he's like, "Are you okay?" And she goes, "Yeah." "Are you
Are you
okay?"
okay?
And
Yeah.
it's like two people who went through the Bud White meat grinder are
Yeah.
like kind of
Yeah.
commiserating. It just was kind of, not funny.
Yeah. Not funny, but yeah.
Yeah. One final thing on Bud and Lynn. I love that they gave us that. It didn't just make all of the events of this film bearable for Bud White, it made it bearable for the audience. You got to give us something that's going right, you know?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And seeing them in a movie together, how sweet are they? How great is a couple? And he doesn't try to change her. He doesn't at any point say, "Now you're done
Yeah,
with that life."
there was no, "I can take you away from all this." None
Hmm.
of that.
No
Yeah,
slut
that was really
shaming.
I was waiting for it. I was waiting for it.
Right.
Yeah, and having come off of Moonstruck, I was very much like them at the movies was very much them at the opera.
Yeah.
It's nice to watch 2 people watch a show together.
Yeah. And later, when she sleeps with Exley, it's not, he doesn't drive up and say, "You slept with somebody." It's, "You slept with Exley. I have one
Mhm,
enemy that you know about because I
mhm.
bitch about him all the time. Like, why not someone else?" Like, so it's not even about what she does for a living. Like, he's a
No,
really
it's
open
not at all
guy.
about that. He knows.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So Bud and Ed teamed up, finally builds to a big crescendo, a final big gunfight. And this parallels again the Nice Guys, where they have a shootout together. One throws the gun to the other, just like in this one. And they
Mhm.
again play it for laughs in the Nice Guys. But in this one, I believe this is what you were referencing earlier. Bud makes a joke. They're there. Dudley's men are
Oh,
arriving.
yeah,
They're
yeah, yeah,
going
yeah.
through their ammunition. They're getting ready for the big battle. And he's like, "I always thought I'd live up to my father." And he goes, "Well, here's your chance." And he goes, "What do you mean?" And he goes, "He died in the line of fire, right?" It's like,
Yeah. 'Cause
and
that's
they
what we're
laugh.
about to do. Yeah.
Yeah, and they
It's
laugh.
great. They have the right amount of a chuckle about it.
Yeah. I'm going to say, just like with the Nice Guys, I feel like we were robbed. I feel like I could have watched this team. I'm ready for the next movie where these guys are already a team. Like, they're that
Mhm.
good. It's a
Yeah.
shame.
You were on the shootout
Yeah.
at the Victory Hotel. Think about how many cops show up to kill them.
It's half the force.
It's half the force. There's not a clean cop. in that force. There's a real chance that the LAPD is gonna be clean after this because
Or non-existent.
those
Yeah.
2 guys killed half the people. Anyone who said, "I'm not going," might have been a decent person.
Mm,
Easily a dozen, possibly 2 dozen cops who come to kill them.
right. And not without great personal trauma to Bud White. Bud takes a bunch of bullets. He even saves Exley's life at one point, takes a bullet in the face for it.
There was good exposition. He carries a pocket knife.
Hmm.
I believe we know because he opens a screen door with a pocket knife in an earlier scene, and then he uses
Yeah.
that pocket knife to stab Smith in the calf
Right.
to grab his attention so that Exley can get a gun.
We'll leave the details of the ending to people, but this has one of the best closing lines, I think, in any film.
Yeah.
When the film closes, we're on yet another of Exley's numerous promotions. He is yet again a hero because the LAPD needs heroes. Lynn has Bud in the back of her car. He's got, I don't know,
IV of some sort,
yeah,
a
he's got an
drainage tube.
IV or a drainage tube hooked up to his face going down somewhere. And he's definitely in no position to speak. Lynn is about to, we get the impression, drive him back to Bisbee and open up her dress shop. And she says to Exley, some men get the world, others get ex-hookers and a trip to Arizona. You know, the way Lynn says it and the look on her face and how sweet her character is, you really don't know who makes out better.
It's the whole point of her line, I think.
Yeah.
Is like I didn't just say lucky guy, unlucky guy. I
Hmm.
just described the 2 guys.
Yeah. I think
It's up
Exley
to
might
you.
want to swap.
Yeah, like there's a pause on Exley, and I think that's a pause of Exley going, I hear Bisbee's nice this time of year."
Yeah.
Yeah.
You do get the distinct impression that Exley and Bud are going to keep in touch. They've been bonded through this, and they seem to be genuine friends at this point.
Yeah.
Did you watch to the very end after the credits?
I don't know that I did.
Because at the very end, there's the closing of Badge of Honor, and the lead detective leaves the squad room, and it just says Badge of Honor, and then it says dedicated to Sergeant Jack Vincennes. So, like
Aw.
the show within a show dedicated
Uh-huh.
to
I
him,
didn't
which would happen.
I feel bad I didn't stick around, I should
Yeah.
have. Matt McCoy, he's the star cop on the show.
That actor, I know from childhood, he was in We Got It Made with Terry Copley playing the maid. I had such a big crush on
I
her.
knew he looked familiar.
He was on
Him
Seinfeld too. Lloyd Braun.
yeah, the one he goes against selling computers.
Yeah,
Yes,
George can
yes.
never live up to Lloyd Braun. That's who he played.
I wanna bring up remember the police chief?
Yeah,
He's got great moments.
enough
Exley
on
is
that.
when yes. When Exley is, he's running down, he's like, "Let me break it down for you. I can't get myself off the hook, but I can tell you the truth." And he basically recaps the film.
Hmm.
And at one point he says, "Blackmailing, gay politicians," and the police chief turns to
Hey,
the
yeah, he looks
DA.
at the DA. He does.
That
Yeah.
police chief the whole time to me, I'm like, "Is that old Henry Rollins?" It looks
Mm.
like Henry Rollins now.
Oh wow, yeah.
It's not I didn't think it was Henry Rollins, but I was like,
Right,
it's
right, right.
uncanny how much he looks like Henry Rollins now.
Yeah, Hank is slowly turning into the father from the Wonder Years
Yeah,
in his
yeah.
old age.
Hank is slowly becoming an angry cop.
Yeah.
No, I love Hank.
Mm.
People say things. I'm cool with Hank. I was in a cab and we were driving down Avenue A
Hmm.
and I saw Henry walking with great like he needed to be somewhere.
You saw
He had
Henry
like some
Rollins power walking?
no, he had something under his arm, like he was
Mm.
like, gotta bring these to the studio or something like that.
Wow.
And I rolled the window down and I went, Hank! And he was like this. He goes, he just threw one arm up in the air and kept walking.
Oh, wow.
I was like, that's all I needed. That's all I need. He
Wow.
didn't turn his head, just threw one hand up in the air and back down.
I
Yeah.
mean, I'll give the guy his due. He's my fourth favorite Black Flag vocalist. And I say that without reservation.
No, I was just gonna say, I was gonna ask you, like, what sort of overreaching takeaways do you have?
Well, one of the things about this movie is like, I'm glad we rewatched it and it definitely held up, but it's funny to me how it hits all the marks that I no longer need from a movie. I don't know if that sounds like I'm bashing it. I'm not. I'm just like, we've been covering a lot of smaller films and films with less going on, and that's
Mhm.
kind of where my head is at now. And
Yeah,
like
yeah.
it was kind of good to dip in this and just be overwhelmed by so much plot. This is a fantastic film with all the plot you can handle.
A little more plot might have broken this movie. This
Yeah.
thing was it was loaded to bear, as they say, which is like a almost like you could almost look at going into it that way. What's his name? Who made it? Um,
Curtis Hanson.
I could almost see someone saying to Curtis Hanson, like, "Give me a movie with the most plot you can safely have."
Yeah.
And he said, "Coming up, I'll show you a movie where if there was one more fact, it would have been too much."
We talked about, or I talked about ad nauseum probably, how perfectly Wonder Boys captured the book without robbing from the book what was great about it.
Mhm.
Likewise, LA Confidential, it cuts out all repetitive scenes. It
It's
cuts
really
out
hard to
all
do.
non-essential. It's very hard to do.
You're
Yeah.
talking about a detective story. People used to read these stories and still do, where you're soaking up this crime for a week or two while you read it. You're soaking in this crime and you have theories and
Hmm.
you really travel along this plot line and you're doing it in 2 hours. It's incredible. I would think it was impossible. It's really well done. I kind of want all the books I loved to be done
Mm.
by Curtis Hanson.
Yeah. Rest in peace.
Okay, that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
But
We
like,
can't have nice things
I
for
wish Curtis
sure.
Hanson made The Martian. The Martian was one of my favorite books. It was a
Mm,
terrific movie,
right.
but the movie completely failed to cover the breadth of the book.
Mm.
I've always said, of course you couldn't. There was so much in that book. But having seen a couple of Curtis Hanson movies, I'm like, well, actually, maybe someone could have.
Yeah, I mean, this is another movie too that's so perfectly cast in retrospect. I mean, at the time, Russell Crowe was a good get, but he wasn't
Mhm.
what he would become. Kevin Spacey was great. You put him in a supporting role? Like,
He
really?
wasn't
Like,
what he'd become.
but I think the only way you could do it is if you start with a really successful book like they did. Elroy had his moment, and that's what got this film made, you know? And so I think the actors bought in, they just wanted to be a part of it. And this is a throwback film. This is like an old timey film. I know it's a period piece, but it's also the type of film that is not made anymore. It was nice. It was nice stepping back into this kind of production. You know, it almost feels like the studio system spit this out. It was so good on so many different levels.
Yeah. And it wasn't cliche. It had lots of original ideas in it. Rollo Tomasi, it's a stroke of genius. It's a Kaiser Soze. It's
Yeah,
a
I thought of
it's a
that. Yeah.
it's a whole movie theater saying, "Oh, that's so good." There's a ton of cliche stuff that happens in these movies, and this I thought this avoided it pretty well.
If this film were made in the year that it's set, it would be a B
Mhm.
picture. It would just be another shoot 'em up in black and white. I love time machine pictures, and this is one of them. This is just amazing. Now, do I want to go back to the uncut racism and sexism of the time?
No, 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 no.
No, I do not. But
The
I
whole
like
the
seeing things pretty and new.
Yeah, the whole point is to see it through a narrow slit where you're just seeing the stuff you wanna see,
Yeah.
because you know what's going on around it, and it's leaking into the movie. There's a lot of people who see that movie and go, "Yeah, it used to be like that," and you and I go, "Used to?"
Yeah.
So it's not just like it's depressing that it used to be like that, it's depressing
Yeah.
that there hasn't been a ton of forward motion.
No.
On an
Um,
up note,
yeah.
like, since I'm bringing myself down, merch.
Oh, isn't that beautiful?
And
Yes, you too can
it's
drink like the stars.
lefty righty, goes
Lefty
both
righty,
ways.
reversible. Link below.
Check the bottom of
Uh,
your screen.
yeah. Another good one in the books, Dave.
Well done.
I hope that we delved enough into it. You think we gave him enough juice?
I've said it before, I'll say it again. If we say 3 or 4 thoughtful things
Yeah. Gotta say
each,
it was a good day.
it was a good day. Yeah.
In closing, in tribute to the late great Jack Vincennes, I'm going to switch from narcotics to vice. Oh, I will see you in the future.
Hollis and Dave would like to thank you for enjoying Pop Culture Graveyard.